willing to protect them. No system was willing to acknowledge what was happening. The attack against the civilian population was carried out pursuant to a state policy to neutralize, through violent crimes, including murder, individuals perceived or alleged to be involved in drug-related and other crimes. The policy was originally developed by Mr. Duterte and his close associates in Davao City and implemented locally, and then expanding to the national level in 2016, once Mr. Duterte became President of the Republic of the Philippines. Victims support the primary prosecution pleading and submit that the evidence shows the existence of such a policy as reflected in the repeated patterns of conduct, the mobilization of state resources, Mr. Duterte's public endorsement, and institutional tolerance. Mr. Duterte first ran for mayor of Davao in 1988 on a campaign to restore law and order in the city, the largest of the main southern island of Mindanao. At that time, Davao was known as the murder capital of the Philippines. Communist insurgents and government security forces gunned each other down and many civilians day and night on Davao streets and barrios. Mr. Duterte was Davao mayor for most of the years between 1988 and 2016. Local NGOs indicate that squad killings of alleged drug dealers, petty criminals, and street children in Davao City started sometimes in the mid-90s, during Mr. Duterte's second term. The group that claimed to be responsible for the killings was called Suluguan Sakatuan, or Servants of the People, amongst other names. But soon the media, as you have also heard in these days, the media began referring to it as the Davao Death Squad. The Davao Death Squad killed hundreds. Mr. Duterte endorsed the killings as an effective way to combat crime, relishing his Duterte nickname and reputation. His active promotion of the killing of suspected drug offenders led to a sharp increase in such killings during his time as mayor. According to one estimate, amongst the other that you have been shown yesterday and today, at least 1,424 such killings took place in Davao between 1988 and 2015. As you heard yesterday during the presentation of Mr. Nichols, and today during the presentation of Ms. Croft, when confronted with the death toll during his presidential election campaign, Mr. Duterte responded, "They said they killed 700? They undercounted. It was 1,700. As you also heard, Your Honors, on numerous occasions as mayor, Mr. Duterte claimed personal responsibility for the policy of killing drug suspects. Even prior to announcing his candidacy for the May 2016 presidential election, Mr. Duterte was already very clear about his intention to eliminate crime by eliminating criminals, applying nationwide the abusive crime control tactics. As reported in the Sunstar Philippines on 24 May 2015, he declared, and I quote, "If by chance that God will place me there, watch out, because the 1,000," referring to the person killed in Davao, "because the 1,000 will become 100,000. You will see the fish in Manila Bay getting fat. That is where I will dump you. End of quote. 3 months after that speech, he renewed his pledge, and I quote, "If I become president, you better hide. That 1,000 will reach 50,000. I would kill all of you who make the lives of Filipinos miserable." End of quote. Mr. Duterte's outspoken vote to embark on a nationwide killing campaign against drug dealers and drug users was the foundation of his presidential electoral platform. During a campaign rally on 15 March 2016, he stated, quote, "When I become president, I will order the police to find those people dealing or using drugs and kill them. The funeral parlors will be packed." Following his election as president, as also explained this morning by Mr. Jeremy, on 9 May 2016, Mr. Duterte continued to declare unequivocally that his anti-drug campaign was focused on killing drug dealers and users. Speaking in Davao on 4 June 2016, he stated, quote, "If you are still into drugs, I'm going to kill you. Don't take this as a joke. I'm not trying to make you laugh, son of bitches. I will really kill you." End of quote. The next month, Mr. Duterte referred to children killed in his drug war as, I quote, "collateral damage." Mr. Duterte and his associates disregarded the most basilar principle of law, human rights, and human dignity. In September 2016, after the then UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon denounced the drug war killings, Mr. Duterte called him a fool, adding, quote, "I will continue the campaign against the criminals. I do not have any pity for them. I don't give a shit. I am the President of the Philippines, not the Republic of the international community." End of quote. In a Human Rights Watch report issued in March 2017, Mr. Duterte's first 6 months in office were labeled as a human rights calamity for the Philippines. Mr. Duterte repeated public statements encouraging the killing of alleged drug offenders were not rhetorical flourishes. They were operational directives. The repeated calls to kill alleged drug dealers and users is indicative of a government policy to direct an attack against a specific civilian population. Public statements encourage lethal force. Law enforcement operations were organized and resourced. The rhetoric of eradication was translated into practice. The scale, coordination and continuity of operations, coupled with public encouragement of lethal enforcement, support the inference of policy. When violence is normalized, repeated, and institutionally defended, as in the present case, it reflects policy. Turning to the alleged liability of Mr. Duterte. The suspect is charged as indirect co-perpetrator under Article 25(3)(a) for committing the crimes jointly with others in furtherance of a common plan or agreement to neutralize through violent crimes including murder, individual perceived or alleged to be involved in drug-related and other crimes. In the alternative, he is also charged under Article 25(3)(b) for ordering or inducing the Davao Death Squad and later the national network to commit the crimes, and under Article 25(3)(c) for aiding, abetting, or otherwise assisting members of the Davao Death Squad and later the national network to commit the crimes. Victims submit that the evidence presented by the prosecution allows to conclude that there are substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Duterte is criminally responsible for the crimes charged. In particular, the evidence shows the existence of a common plan to kill individuals perceived by the authorities as implicated in drug-related crimes. The common plan originated in Davao in the late 80s when the suspect instructed members of the death squad, police officers and non-police hitmen, to conduct operations against the targeted individuals, provided funds and other resources to achieve the aim of the agreement. As already recalled, Mr. Duterte made unequivocal public statements encouraging police and civilians to kill alleged drug offenders. Such statements indicate an intent to use the country's law enforcement agencies to engage in murders. Mr. Duterte was proud of his achievements at the point that he put his method at the center of his presidential campaign. When elected president, he adopted the same method as in Davao nationwide and continued to state publicly and unequivocally that his anti-drug campaign would focus on killing drug dealers and users. Mr. Duterte relied on the support of the police to locate and kill individuals involved in drugs, warning that funeral parlors would be crowded. On 7 May 2016, the final day of the campaigning for the presidential elections, Mr. Duterte made it clear that these threats were to be taken literally, and I quote, "All of you who are into drugs, you sons of bitches, I will really kill you. I have no patience. I have no middle ground." End of quote. Madam President, Your Honors. The loss victims carry is not measured only in the death of a loved one. It is measured in the empty chair at the dinner table, the birthdays that will never be celebrated, the dreams that ended abruptly, and the futures that were taken from them. As one of the victims put it, and I quote, "My loved one was not perfect. None of us are. But he was a human being. He was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's partner. He deserved dignity, due process, and the chance to defend himself. Instead, his life ended without warning, without explanation, and without accountability. For many of us, the moment we learned of our loved one's death was the moment our own lives changed forever. We were left with questions that no one in authority would answer. We were left with fear that speaking out would put us in danger. And we were left with a painful knowledge that the institutions meant to protect us had failed us." End of quote. The trauma of these events did not end with the loss of life. It continues every day. Families were left to navigate grief while facing stigma and suspicion. Many were told implicitly or explicitly that their loved ones had deserved what happened to them. They were made to feel ashamed for seeking answers. Some were threatened when they tried to file complaints. Others were told not to bother because nothing would come of it. Children witness violence now struggle with fear. Parents who lost their children live with enduring guilt and despair. Entire communities still carry the memory of nights filled of sirens, shouting, and uncertainty. Your Honors, the victim's suffering is never abstract nor remote. It remains real, immediate, and ongoing. Your Honors, trauma is not always visible. It resides in the silence of the ones who are afraid to speak. It lives in the hesitation of a child who no longer feels safe walking outside, and in the constant fear of families who still look over their shoulders, wondering whether they will be targeted next. For the victims, the confirmation of charges is not merely a legal step. It is a recognition that their loved ones mattered. It is an acknowledgement that what happened to them was wrong. It is a message that they have not been forgotten. These proceedings offer something they had been denied in years: hope. Hope that the truth will be established, that the one responsible will be held to account, that future generations will not endure the same suffering. Justice cannot restore their loved ones, but it can restore dignity. Justice can affirm humanity. Justice can help them begin to heal. Madam President, Your Honors, for the purpose of the confirmation of a charges hearing, the prosecution must demonstrate substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Duterte committed each of the crimes charged. Victims submit that the evidence presented by the prosecution meets this evidentiary standard. The confirmation of all charges is not only legally warranted, it is essential to the integrity of international criminal justice. The evidence before this chamber establishes reasonable ground to believe that crimes against humanity of murder and attempted murder were committed in the context of widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population, and that Mr. Duterte bears individual criminal responsibility under Article 25 of the Rome Statute. Your Honors, the victims have waited years for this moment. They have been silenced, stigmatized, and denied justice in their own country. Today, they stand before you with the hope that justice, long denied, may finally be within reach. This court is their last refuge, and today, on their behalf, we ask this chamber to affirm that their suffering matters, that their rights matter, and that the rule of law extends even to the most powerful, by confirming all the charges against Mr. Duterte and committing him to trial. This concludes my part, Your Honors. With your leave, I will give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Andres, for concluding our presentation. Merci beaucoup.
Judge Motoj, thank you very much. Maitre Andres, you have the floor.
Madam President, Your Honors, I am Gilbert Andres. My colleague, Ms. Masida, earlier submitted that Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign disproportionately affected the poor and marginalized. What were the conditions of the victims targeted by Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign? How poor and marginalized were his victims? The victims targeted by Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign were from low-income, high-density communities. In an urban setting, this meant that some victims live in an area of about 69,000 persons per square kilometer during the relevant period. A typical floor area of the house of a victim in these high-density communities was about 6 square meters. For some victims, their house was as small as the area of 2 tables in this courtroom. The victims' houses were typically made up of wood, used tarpaulin, plastic, light materials, and some broken hollow blocks. Any material that they could scavenge and utilize. As the victims lived in high-density communities, their neighbors knew them very well. The victims lived in close-knit communities. The victims' close-knit communities meant that they immediately knew if a person was an outsider to their community. And any traumatic event that happened to these victims in their close-knit communities was known and whispered throughout their community. As the victims were from low-income communities, to survive poverty, their houses were homes to multiple generations of their families to conserve their meager resources. For Filipinos, especially from low-income communities, their family is not just the nuclear family. This family extends to the grandparents, the lolo and lola, and the siblings of a spouse, the brothers and sisters.